Okay, let's just jump right in. It is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. And if you've been anywhere near the news today, you know the political temperature in this country just went from a simmer to a full rolling boil.
That's putting it mildly. I think the thermometer just shattered.
We have breaking news out of Minnesota that honestly it feels like something from a movie, not real life. The U.S. Department of Justice has just served grand jury subpoenas to the highest-ranking officials in the state.
And we're talking the absolute top. Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, Attorney General Keith Ellison.
And it doesn't stop there. St. Paul Mayor Kaylee Herr, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty. It's a clean sweep.
It's completely unprecedented. And let's be clear, this is not just a polite request for some documents. This is the climax of a massive escalation. We have an estimated 3,000 federal agents on the streets of the Twin Cities right now.
3,000?
We have the state government suing the federal government. And tragically, we have a civilian death that has just ignited this entire firestorm.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. Because you hear fraud investigation and you think, okay, accountants, spreadsheets, kind of boring. But then you see the footage from Minneapolis and it looks like an occupation.
It does.
So the central question for us today is this. How did a scandal about free lunches for kids spiral into a constitutional crisis with armed agents and threats of invoking the Insurrection Act?
It's such a tangled mess.
Yeah.
And there are really two competing stories here, two narratives driving this whole conflict. Our mission today is to pull those apart for you.
Okay, so what's narrative number one?
Narrative one is from the Trump administration. They're essentially arguing Minnesota is a failed state, that it's so full of fraud, billions in fraud, that local leaders either ignored it or, were a part of it, and so a federal cleanup is necessary.
And the other side?
The other side, the state of Minnesota, is calling this a federal invasion, a politically motivated operation using fraud as a pretext and excuse to punish political opponents.
So to get to the truth, we're digging into everything. We've got the June 2024 Office of the Legislative Auditor report, which is a bombshell. We've got House Oversight Committee transcripts from this month, court filings, and of course, this breaking news.
And we really have to start at the beginning. Before the agents, before the shooting, before any of these subpoenas, there was the money.
Right, the origin story. Because the whole federal argument, the justification for sending in 3,000 agents, it rests on this idea that Minnesota just let a staggering amount of money walk out the door. I've heard $250 million, but lately I'm hearing $9 billion. That's a huge gap. Which is it?
Well, that gap is crucial to understanding the escalation. The verified hard number, the one backed by the state auditor and the first DOJ charges, is about $250 million. And that was centered on a nonprofit called Feeding Our Future.
Okay, and $250 million is not a small number. That is $250 million.
It's massive, stolen from federal nutrition programs during the pandemic. But then, fast forward to this month, and you have House Oversight Chairman James Comer citing a figure of $9 billion.
Okay, where does a number like $9 billion even come from?
He's widening the net, basically. He's arguing the fraud wasn't just this one nonprofit. The argument is that there is deep systemic fraud across all of Minnesota's social services, Medicaid, you name it. The $250 million, in his view, was just the tip of the iceberg.
A highly contested tip of the iceberg, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. But it's the number the administration is using to justify the scale of this operation.
Okay, let's stick with the $250 million for a second, because I read that OLA report, and the details of how they did it are they're wild. How do you steal that much money meant for kids?
You rely on the system just blinking, on chaos. The mechanics were shockingly simple. Feeding Our Future claimed to be serving meals, but the numbers they were reporting were mathematically impossible.
Give me an example of impossible.
Okay, from the report. Feeding Our Future claimed that just 7 of their sites were serving as many meals as the entire St. Paul Public School District.
Wait, 7 locations versus a whole school district.
Correct.
And nobody at the Minnesota Department of Education, the MDE, looked at that and just said, hold on a second, that can't be right.
Well, here's the infuriating part. They kind of did. The report is full of red flags that were seen but ignored. But the anecdote that perfectly captures the failure is what I call the phone died excuse.
Oh, man. I saw this. I almost couldn't believe it was real. Walk us through it.
So an MDE monitor is doing a virtual site visit, right, over video chat. For about 15 minutes, they see maybe 30 kids get meals, normal stuff. Then the site director claims the monitor's phone connection dropped.
Okay. Tech issues happen.
Sure. But when they reconnected an hour later, the director claimed that in that exact hour, the phone was dead 1,800 kids had shown up, eaten, and left.
1,800 kids in 60 minutes.
That's 30 kids a minute, one every 2 seconds. It's not possible.
And the state?
Yeah.
They just accepted that. They signed off on it.
Essentially, yes. And this is where the failed state argument gets all its fuel. The OLA concluded MDE's oversight was inadequate. But, and this is a huge but, the why is what's so critical. MDE officials said they felt they didn't have the regulatory authority to deny the application.
They were afraid of being sued.
Yes. They were terrified. Feeding Our Future had accused them of discrimination before. So you have a state agency that is literally more afraid of a lawsuit than of losing hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars. That paralysis is exactly what the fraudsters bet on.
Wow. So they were frozen by bureaucracy while the vault was being emptied.
Exactly. And if you're the Trump administration, you look at that and say, see, this state can't police itself. We have to go in. And that is the justification for what happened next, Operation Metro Surge.
Which brings us to right now, because we're not talking about auditors anymore. We are talking about Operation Metro Surge. For the average person in the Twin Cities, what does this actually look like? 3,000 agents. It's hard to picture the scale.
It's an overwhelming show of force. The Department of Homeland Security sent in between 2,000 and 3,000 agents. For perspective, the entire Minneapolis police force is maybe 600 officers.
So you have 5 times the number of local cops. But they're all feds.
All feds. ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, Border Patrol. And the rhetoric from the top has been anything but subtle. Secretary Kristi Noem and the president have called Minnesota a corrupt hub.
And they've added a national security angle to this, right?
They have. The stated goal is rooting out fraud, but they're also alleging that some of these funds were funneled to al-Shabaab in Somalia through something called Hawala networks.
Hold on. You just dropped a term there. For those of us who aren't familiar, what exactly is a Hawala network?
Right. So Hawala is a traditional informal way of transferring money. It relies on a network of brokers and trust, not on bank wires. No physical money actually crosses borders, which makes it fast, cheap, and incredibly hard to trace.
Which makes it perfect if you want to allege terrorism funding.
Precisely. It turns a financial crime into a national security threat. But for people living there, this isn't about geopolitics. It's about aggressive tactics on their streets.
Yeah, I read about the school vans. St. Paul's schools had to order special magnets for their vehicles.
Correct. Agents were pulling over school vans, thinking they were part of the fraud ring. It got so bad, the district had to put these big magnets on them that say, official school transport, just so kids with special needs could get to school without being stopped.
And then there's the story of the Porter family. That one was just heartbreaking.
A clear case of mistaken identity. Agents were looking for stolen FBI firearms, but they had the wrong address. They raided the wrong apartment, terrified a family. It's things like that that have just mobilized the community.
So people are pushing back.
Oh, yeah. You have people 3D printing whistles to warn neighbors when IC is in the area. Groups of ICE watchers tracking unmarked cars with out-of-state plates. It's like a neighborhood watch, but they're watching the federal government.
It's a community and a defensive crouch. It sounds so volatile.
It is. And that tension, that friction, is what led to the tragedy on January 7th.
Killing of Renee Good.
This is the flashpoint. Everything changed here. Before this, it was a political fight. After this, there was blood on the ground. Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old mother, shot and killed by an ICE agent. And just like everything else in this story, what happened depends completely on who you ask.
So let's start with the administration's version of events.
They came out swinging. The president called her a professional agitator, a terrorist. Their story is that she tried to run over an agent with her car, which justified deadly force. DHS even classified it as an act of domestic terrorism.
That's a heavy label. But what are witnesses saying?
A completely different story. The 9/11 transcripts have witnesses saying agents shot her point blank. And video analysis suggests the agent had already sidestepped the car, that he wasn't in immediate danger when he fired.
So a disputed shooting. Normally, this is where a state agency like the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension would step in to investigate, right?
Yep.
As a neutral party.
Usually, yes. But here, the FBI reportedly blocked the state BCA from the scene. They literally shut the state out of investigating a homicide that happened on their own streets.
Wait, hold on. They shut the state out.
Yes, and think about what that says. The federal government is basically saying, we answer to no one here. And that move sent a shockwave through the Justice Department itself. We know that 6 career prosecutors in the Minneapolis U.S. Attorney's Office resigned over this.
6 of them. Career prosecutors don't just quit.
No, they don't. The allegation is they were being pressured to treat the civilian death as an assault on a federal officer to fit the administration's narrative instead of investigating it as a potential wrongful death.
It's a crisis of legitimacy. And that brings us right back to today. The federal government isn't backing down. They're doubling down with these subpoenas.
They are going for the head, targeting the governor, the mayors, the AG, and the potential charge they're looking at is 18 U.S.C. Section 372.
Okay, translate that.
It's conspiracy to impede or injure an officer. It's a serious federal crime. The legal theory they seem to be building is that the public statements from these officials, telling citizens to know their rights, telling ICE to leave, that those actions actually form a criminal conspiracy.
Wait, let me get this straight. They're investigating whether a governor's speech and policy choices could be a criminal conspiracy.
That is the absolute heart of this legal war. Can political opposition be criminalized as obstruction? The administration is saying, yes, if you encourage resistance, you're endangering our agents.
But the state of Minnesota has filed its own lawsuit. What's their argument?
They're swinging with the Constitution. They're citing the 10th Amendment, that the feds can't commandeer the state or invade its sovereignty. And they're citing the First Amendment, arguing this whole operation is political retaliation.
The pretext argument.
Exactly. The lawsuit flat out says the fraud investigation is just an excuse. They point out that fraud cases are usually fought with accountants and subpoenas, not 3,000 agents in tactical gear. They say this isn't about money, it's a political hit on a state that voted against the president.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean? Because this feels so much bigger than Minnesota. This feels like a precedent for every state.
It is. It's a stress test for the entire American system. We have a massive documented fraud. That's a fact. $250 million stolen. The state failed to catch it. That's a fact. But the response, it's either a necessary cleanup or a military occupation, depending on your view.
It's a test of the limits of power.
It is. Can the federal government prosecute a governor for disagreeing with them? Can a president just send a surge of agents into a state that doesn't want them? If Minnesota loses this, it fundamentally changes the balance of power in this country.
And it really makes you ask, when does a check and balance stop being a legal term and start being a physical fight?
That is the terrifying part. We have the National Guard on standby. We have subpoenas flying. A civilian is dead. The machinery of government cooperation has shattered. It's not just theory anymore.
It makes you wonder. We all want accountability. I mean, stealing from kids is just, it's heinous. 98 people have been charged. But when you look at the cost, the fear, the breakdown of trust, the loss of life, has the price of accountability become too high?
That's the question everyone has to ask. And as this all heads to court, we're about to find out if our system can even handle the answer.
We will definitely be watching. That's all for this deep dive. Stay safe out there, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.